So I am Val Litwin. I'm the CEO currently of the Whistler Chamber of Commerce and delighted to be here. I was a volunteer mentor for FWE for a number of years and I had an amazing experience doing that. So it's just kind of exciting to be back in the fold, and I'm here to talk a little bit about brand and marketing, which is something some of the best universities and colleges in the world will take years to teach their students. So let's just adjust our expectations accordingly. I have about 15 minutes of content, but I think we'll go ahead and we'll do some Q&A as we flow through. But what I'm going to walk you through are actually 4 principles that served me very, very well over the last couple of years in companies that I've either started, co-founded, or bigger teams that I've been a part of. It was actually fun seeing John again. I was with Nurse Next Door for about 2.5 years, just when they were starting to grow into the US. So that was all about brand and all about marketing, and what an incredible journey and fun to get the electricity from John again. I forgot, just being in the same room with that guy, it's pretty electrifying. But let's just keep that in mind. This is a huge subject, so we're not going to get all the way to the bottom of it. But like I said, I'll share some of those core principles. So in 15 minutes, I'm going to try and take us through, again, some of those things that have served me well and some of the organizations well I've worked with. But when we think about brand, just kind of a rough definition, if it helps us a little bit, is when I think of brand, and I'd love to hear if you have alternate definitions. When I think of brand, I think of the sum total of thoughts, feelings, impressions your customers have about you and your business, and other people too that aren't your customers. So is that kind of a fair definition? We can kind of work with that. We at least know we're not talking about logos, right? And color palettes? Okay, good. So where I want to start actually is with a notion called brand congruency. And I think the number one principle is you have to keep your brand congruent, and there's a way to do it. And I'm going to walk you through very high level a tool that I've used in numerous organizations called the Brand Bible, and I put together a little cheat sheet for you. So if it's helpful to look at the sheet as we go along, and we can kind of ask questions and talk about it. But congruency as it pertains to a business means all aspects of the business look, feel, smell, touch, everything feels the same, right? No matter what angle you look at the business from, it's looking congruent, it's looking aligned. And we like congruency, right? When you think about your best friends, aren't they usually the ones that do what they say they're going to do? So we like brands, we like people that are congruent. And we're actually hardwired to like that. That's why when something is congruent, we feel attracted to it. So think about that when you're reaching out to your customers and you're building that solid brand foundation. The more you can align it from top to bottom, and John may have used the phrase, I can only be there for a little bit today, from the inside out, it has to look the same on every level. So think about Nike or Apple, right? You go into a physical location, the colors are the same, the product looks the same, the uniforms, the experience, the service experience is all aligned and congruent. So how do you keep your business congruent, both inside and outside? Well, you need an instruction manual, and that's the Brand Bible. And we're going to talk a little bit about it. But first, I have a question for you with just a show of hands. How many of you have your brand in one place? And again, I'm not talking about your logo, your color palettes, your layout guidelines. How many of you have your purpose, your core values, like John was talking about, your positioning statements, your taglines, maybe your tone words, maybe you've developed a brand character? How many of you have that in one place? Just a show of hands. Okay, and of the people that have put their hands up, how many of you know how to operationalize it in that one-stop shop document where you put it all? Do you have instructions on how you or your team? Okay, yeah, interesting. So my business partners and I, when we were with Blow Dry Bar, so that was Judy Brooks and Devin Brooks, mother-daughter duo, we put together a tool called a brand book, and that is the one-stop shop where you can find all the DNA of your brand. And if you look at your cheat sheet, I put together a little table of contents there for how you would put it together. And I'm suggesting in your Brand Bible, you want to have your purpose, your vision, your values, your positioning statement, your taglines, and tone. And what you do once you have this document compiled is you create congruency by making sure, John I know touched a little bit on this with the core values, but it has to be more than just the core values. This has to be the first touch document any new hires in your organization receive. Your designers need a laminated copy of it beside their computers. You want to incorporate your values and brand language into performance reviews, especially those self-evaluations, weekly meetings with your team. Even if you don't have a big team, maybe there's just a couple of you, you need to be using that brand language. Any presentation you're putting together, any marketing collateral or campaign has to be drawing from the Lego pieces that you have put together in that brand Bible. So if we just kind of look a little bit at some of the definitions here, just so we're all on the same page. I like to use the word purpose. Other companies will use the word mission, but it's roughly the same thing. And the purpose is why you do what you do. And I know some of you put up your hands that you have it all in one place, but how many of you have actually articulated a purpose for your company? Okay. Does someone want to shout out a purpose, just so I can get an example of what a purpose might sound like for you?
To provide unrivaled healthcare.
To provide unrivaled healthcare? Yeah, that's great. That's very clear, right? That's going to direct what you do daily, and it's a very strong call to action for you and your team. Okay. So that's the why you do what you do. The vision is that special dream you have for your company. It says where you're going and what you're going to look like in the future. Now, some companies choose to share their vision externally, some don't, because your vision may be quite clinical and dry, but very exciting for you. Maybe not exciting for the public, right? To become the #1 barefoot Contessa in the world. Maybe the public doesn't need to know that, maybe they do, but a vision is certainly important for you and your team. Positioning statements, so values, we spent a lot of time talking about John. These are the values you hire and fire by. This is how you do your business. Your values actually dictate to you and your team how you're behaving when you're in business. Taglines and positioning statements. I spent a lot of time on most of your websites, so I saw a lot of you actually have some great positioning and some great taglines, but you do need both, and the best way to think about distinguishing them is that positioning statement is really the clinical description of what you do. It may turn out to be a very sexy, cool statement that you use as almost a tagline on your marketing collateral, but typically it's something that's a little bit drier. It explains what you do. The tagline is that more provocative, quick, sweet, short one-liner that grabs people's attention and pulls them into your brand, makes them want to interact with you and learn a little bit more. So the two actually work in harmony, and they're very important. You have to have both of them. So I'll give you a quick example. If you're a dry cleaner, your positioning statement might be 24-hour cleaners, but your tagline might be, let us handle your dirty laundry, right? So you do need both, and you have to have them interacting with one another. And then I think another really important piece that adds to the congruency is you do have to define your tone. And I would suggest that you pick 3 words in your brand book that encapsulate how you're trying to sound and behave. And when you think, especially now, about all the digital communication we have, whether you're tagging a photo, Ava, in Instagram, whether your team is sending out an email, whether you're standing up and making a presentation, what is your brand? I mean, for Blow Dry Bar, we were very cheeky. A lot of our taglines were very sexualized, right? But the physical experience in the store was very high-end, very clean, very professional, so it worked. But we were cheeky, for sure. That doesn't work for every brand. So what are those couple of words that you use to guide your communications and kind of that vibe outside of your company? Because in the brand game, you're always fighting that dissonance too, right? An employee says the wrong thing, someone writes something that's actually not true about you on a blog, or it hits the media. Maybe you misfired a newsletter from Constant Contact. You didn't quite edit it the way you wanted it to. So you're always fighting that brand dissonance and that disconnect, so you want to make sure it all lines up. So any questions on this first principle? Does that kind of make sense? So create a strong brand foundation by getting your brand congruent. That would be principle number 1. Principle number 2, and I don't think this is really a radical notion for anyone in this room, but can we all agree we're in the business of creating experiences, not executing commercial transactions? Great, so we all understand that. People seldom forget experiences. They often forget transactions. And why do you think that is? It's an emotional connection, right? So any psychologist will tell you one of the reasons why you have certain memories that are fresh as a daisy from childhood is you have such powerful emotions attached to those memories. So this is what we need to be doing in our businesses if we want to be able to differentiate ourselves from the pack. And you need to be thinking about one useful exercise. It's not on the cheat sheet, but if you have a customer journey, if you have a customer process, it might be fun to map out what it looks like from that first discovery on your website to maybe the first email communication to potential final service delivery. Look at what that looks like and see where can you be aligning your brand experience with that customer journey and actually working to create more of an emotional experience. So if I think about a couple of incredible kind of entrepreneurs in town and brands that have really worked at creating the experience. For those of you that are from Vancouver, do you know Bombay Brow Bar? Okay, great. So you walk into Bombay Brow Bar, and by the way, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's, I'm going to get it wrong because I don't go in there, but it's threading, right? For eyebrows, eyebrow sculpting. So you go in, and they are clearly trying to create an experience of stepping into India. Lush colors, you're greeted at the door with a warm chai tea. They have visuals on the wall on flat screens of Bollywood videos. I mean, it's a wonderful place to be. In fact, when they launched in Yaletown, a few doors down from our blow dry bar, I just liked going to hang out there because I love drinking the chai. I just wanted to be in the space, right? I wasn't even a customer, but they were creating an experience that was so irresistible. Bombay Brow Bar does an incredible job. Nurse Next Door, I don't know if John kind of got into this, but there is so much competition in the healthcare industry, and so much of that personal care in the home is about bathing someone, meal preparation. We don't even call it making a delicious meal. It's called meal prep. So what Nurse Next Door did that was so clever was they really figured out how to make it an experience, and how they operationalized that was all the caregivers were trained at some point, usually in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the interaction with the caregiver, was to ask the question, what would make our visit special today? Not, how do you like your peanut butter sandwich, but what would make it special, right? Do you like opera? Do we need to go salsa dancing? Do we want to go fly a plane at the park? What do you want to do? You just want to go sit in a field and chat? So they were always looking to figure out from the customer, how can we make it more of an experience for you? At Blow Dry Bar, we had an interesting kind of standard operating procedure around our managers on the floor, who we called blow bosses. They would be observing all the time special details around the interaction between the hairdressers, we called them blowers, and the customer, and always picking up on those details. And we empowered our managers to do a follow-up email. They didn't have to do it to everyone because it would be kind of an impossible task, but take a personal detail and make a very personalized follow-up email. So we had a group of women come into the Yaletown location kind of in the first couple of months that we started up the business. And they were all going on a stagette to Vegas, so they came in at like noon, and they were going to hop on the plane and have a crazy night that night. So our blow boss went online, because the women were all talking around the bar about all the clubs they were going to go to, and our manager just thought, you guys are going to be so hungover tomorrow morning. I'm going to go online and find a hangover cure for you in Vegas. So she went online, she found an incredible juice bar that actually specialized in creating hangover tonics for people that partied too hard in Vegas. Follow-up email to all 8 women that came into the bar. Hey girls, you know, have a great time in Vegas. Great meeting you today. By the way, sounds like you're going to have a crazy night. Here's a link to the best juice bar in Vegas for when you wake up tomorrow. This is going to make your hangover feel much, much better. So really looking at how to create that experience is totally key. So I wanted to touch on a little bit of research here, and lucky for us, there's actually 3 things that contribute to a phenomenal customer experience, and I put it on the cheat sheet here. And if you do these things right, you will actually get a customer coming back or saying something nice about your company. So the first one, you can see it there, is be reliable. I mean, you have to perform as promised, and this is really just a get in the game piece. This is nothing special, but if you don't do it, you're not going to have people coming back. You do need to be reliable and perform as promised. Next, you have to be responsive. So you have to jump to the pump, right? You have to perform in a timely fashion. You have to respond to those key questions. So paired with be reliable, this is your baseline. But it's not until you figure out the third piece, which you can see right there on the cheat sheet, that you're actually going to get someone to recommend your company or come back. So the research shows that if you're reliable and responsive, you're going to get about a 7 or 8 out of 10. And a 7 or 8 out of 10, if you've heard of the Net Promoter Score Index, is really what they call a neutral score. So they're not someone that's going to say anything negative about your company, but even though you've actually kind of semi-blown their minds, they're actually not going to come back or say anything nice about you, which is kind of bizarre, because in school, if we got 80%, wasn't that an A- or a B+ or something? I mean, that was a pretty good grade, right? Doesn't work in customer service, and especially not with the experience. So what gets you to a 10, what the research has shown, is if you actually build those relationships. So if you make it personal, if you're using compliments, you're using people's names. So thinking back to the stagette example, personalized email to that group of women that came in. So in theory, our service was reliable, it was responsive, and now we've gone that extra step to build a relationship. They're going to talk about it, or they're going to come back. So put all 3 of those things together, and you're going to create that incredible experience. So that would be principle number 2. Next is know your tribe or know your market. And the reason you have to know and nurture your market is because there's just so much competition in almost every single one of your categories, right? In theory, you just have to assume there's a ton of competition. So if you are not speaking directly to your tribe, they are tuning you out or they're not even paying attention. So the nice thing about this particular piece, and we'll get into how you kind of get into the head of your consumer a little bit, is once you know what they want and what they're thinking, you actually don't really need to say too much, which is really exciting from a branding perspective. And we've all seen those brands that are just so simple and they speak so clearly to us. That's because they've gone through this process. They've really understood their tribe. And I actually think a brand that's doing very well, and I stole one of their images, is the Tough Mudder brand. They have really figured out their tribe. And at first blush, if you look at their collateral, their images, their language, you'll think they're just catering to a crazy bunch of athletes, but that's actually not the case. Their whole brand and what they're trying to communicate is teamwork and camaraderie, right? And you can kind of look in the picture there a little bit. This guy kind of looks like Brad Pitt. Let's give him that. He looks pretty good. But there's some different body types in the background. This is actually not the best picture because I don't see any women in it. But you can see there's kind of a range of people. This guy up here looks like he's maybe a little bit older. And the thing that I thought was so smart about this brand too is all their images, almost all of them, people are completely covered head to toe in mud, which is the great equalizer, right? So you actually can't quite make out what you're looking at. There's just, there's people out there covered in mud having a great time. And they've got a name for their tribe. It's called the Mudder Nation. And they're speaking to that tribe with the right images, with the right language, and they don't really have to say too much. I mean, they've got incredible images that just say teamwork. So it's pretty phenomenal. They figured out what their customer wants, and they just want an opportunity to get away for a weekend, punish themselves, and have a good time and not feel like it's a competition, like they didn't cross the finish line fast enough. So we did the same thing at Blow Dry Bar as well. We came up with a blow girl, and we actually wrote a little book about her. So we knew where she shopped, what her favorite ice cream was, what sort of websites and magazines she went to and read. We put a ton of time into it, and we even invented a vocabulary for her, so the way she spoke. And what we did is we took that vocabulary and we gave it to our team as a part of the orientation and said, this is your new language now, this is how we talk. So in the bar, for example, we didn't have a complaint, we had a split end. Just as one example. So we could talk freely and openly about split ends, and everyone knew there was an unhappy customer over there because it was a split end, and then we had a protocol around that. Really tight space, right? We had to come up with kind of a coded language that didn't disrupt the service experience. So that was what we did to kind of pull our tribe together. When we defined that blow girl, we also said she values time and she values money. This blow girl is actually maybe not yet an uber professional. She's a little bit younger, but she likes her hair to look good for that first date, maybe before a job interview, maybe she has a presentation somewhere. So she values time and money. And so we made sure all our taglines and positioning statements spoke to that. So one of our lead taglines was so simple. It was $30, 30 minutes. Another one was wash, blow, go. And it all spoke directly to that tribe, right to that blow girl, and it spoke to her in that language as well. So take the time to get inside the head of your customers and speak again in a way that's congruent to them, so that aligns with your purpose, your values, all the rest, and actually speak that language. Just really around marketing success and kind of a principle of coming up with an idea, trying it again, and tweaking it. And I think, just to be clear, marketing, I think, is really the activity of speaking with and interacting with your tribe such that you're either driving sales or raising awareness for your brand, elevating your brand. And I'll say that again. So it's the activity of interacting with and speaking to your tribe such that you're either driving sales or elevating your brand. And it's important to recognize there's a distinction. I think we all hope that we do the two things at the same time, which is drive sales and actually elevate the brand. But quite often we don't. We might be driving sales but killing our brand. We might just be elevating our brand and no one's walking through the door. So it's important to know there's a difference, and ideally we want to go for both. The main message I wanted to share here is there are no silver bullets in marketing, and I think it was so timely, and I felt so bad for them, but Starbucks, did you see that campaign they launched where they wanted to talk about race? Did you see this? And they had a little hashtag, and they had it on the coffee cup. And I saw just a brutal tweet when it got launched. Someone tweeted, and it was a quote from the barista at Starbucks, "Oh, you like your coffee black? Anything else you want to talk about?" Like, Starbucks just got destroyed on that one, right? I think about, on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Sony hack by the North Koreans and the launch of the movie The Interview. At first blush, we thought, oh my gosh, they spent all this money on this movie, no one's ever going to see it. Wrong, turned out to be the most viral movie of, I don't know, maybe all time. At least we all know about it, right? So then that kind of worked out in the end. And you got to think the North Korean marketing team got their wrist slapped for that one, right? That we should hack Sony. Oh, that didn't work. So the point is really, there's really smart people getting paid a ton of money to do things that totally don't work. And so you should not beat yourselves up when you're thinking about your marketing initiatives, because we may have incredible ideas that are completely aligned with our brand Bible, our core values, et cetera, and they may totally fall flat on their face. But the best brands do something very smart. They take that idea and they make sure, again, it's got that congruent fit with everything else that they've clarified within the DNA of their brand. They give it a shot, and then they tweak it to success. They try it again, they try it again, they try it again. So an example I can give here is when we were working with Blow Dry Bar, we came up with a mobile service actually called Blow on the Go that we thought would be quite a big revenue generator. And we ended up getting a ton of requests for fashion show hairstyling. We didn't really get a lot of individual customers, asking to have it at their home. It might have changed a little bit now. And so we just thought, okay, we need to figure out how to monetize it to these fashion shows and all these designers that want us to go and do their hair backstage. But that industry, I don't know if you know it too well in Vancouver, not a lot of people pay a lot of money for that stuff. C'est la vie. So we were actually losing money on it. It wasn't driving sales. They weren't paying. We just thought initially, we'll kind of get our brand out there and it'll eventually start to produce money. It kind of never did. So we pivoted our thinking a little bit and we said, what if we just have it as purely a brand building arm, just as a brand extension for us? We'll turn it into an amazing training opportunity for our team, because they all want to build their portfolios, they want to get pictures, they want to feel that vibe and that energy of being backstage. So the team loved it. And then what we did, instead of trying to monetize it, we just said, look, you need to, third party who wants us to come in, you need to leverage $1,000 worth of gift certificates for our team. And so we actually turned it into this fund. So we still paid our team, but we actually piled on gift certificates. We made sure they got incredible portfolio experience for it. So it turned out to be an amazing kind of training and development, retention and incentive piece for our team that totally destroyed us on the revenue side. But then now we had a different frame around it, and it was an incredible brand extension for us in the community in terms of elevating awareness around what we did. But we tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it, and then we realized we're just not going to make money on this. But there's something valuable here. So how do we need to be kind of reloading it and putting it out there into the community? So that's just one example. When I think about the businesses around this table, and again, I've kind of gone through the profiles and seen a bunch of your websites. When it comes to marketing, I would say you don't want to be doing more than 3 to maybe 6 or 7 things at a time. So you can't do the splattered paint on the wall thing where you've got about a half dozen marketing initiatives. Keep it really tight. Find out if you can measure the impact of what you're doing and keep tweaking those couple of things you're doing. So I'll give an example, because there's a million things you can do to market your business, but many of you are kind of experts in your category, right? So thinking about your skincare line, maybe you're speaking places, you're an expert, maybe you're on the speaking circuit. This would be something I would suggest if I was working with you. You want to do maybe 4 to 6 speaking engagements a year, and you want to nail them. So you want to have a presentation that's ready to go, you're acing it every time. You're blogging maybe once a week on your own website, or you're guest blogging for a couple of people, and then maybe you're pairing that with a mailer campaign to potential distributors. So there you go. You've got 3 things. They're all in the calendar, you're tracking them, you're measuring them, and you kind of know what's coming back. You know the ROI. So often we get caught in that thing of, oh, we've been doing it for so long, I got to keep that particular marketing extension alive. I need to keep doing whatever it is, that thing I'm doing. The other thing to remember is what you started to do in the beginning doesn't work 2-3 years down the road. When we were with Blow, we launched the first 3 years with total repetition, almost annoying repetition of those core taglines. When we got into the third year, we started to splice in new marketing copy. So we started to switch it up because we had taken 3 years to really educate the population on what we're here to do and what that value proposition was. Now we could get a little bit creative. But that would be one of my main suggestions is don't do too much. Do a couple of things, do them very well, measure them, find out if you can get, find out what the impact is. So on the cheat sheet, just a couple of tips. Know the difference between marketing to drive sales versus marketing to build your brand. They are both valuable and it's smart to be doing both, but don't fool yourself into thinking that this really exciting brand project over here is going to drive sales. Maybe it's driving people through the door, but they're not buying anything. Okay, so maybe something's wrong with your sales process, but not the marketing, right? The bodies are coming, but they're not buying product. Find out if you can measure the ROI or just the impact, right? It's a fancy marketing term, return on investment. I'm sure many of you know it. But can you actually measure it? So thinking about so many small businesses have gift cards that they like to put out there. Do you have a code associated with it? Is anyone at the front desk tracking how many of them come back? Do you know what the return on investment is there? And then, like I said, don't do more than a few things at once. Stay focused, pay attention to your initiatives, and tweak them to success. So that would be the fourth and final principle. And that's about it.